Now that this topic's interest is at an all-time low, meaning this video will get about 2 views, is killer harder now than it was before? Yes. Okay, let's go a little more detailed on it. I had to wait a couple of weeks to make this video when the topic was really hot, since I was learning Ghoul instead of playing Sadako like I normally do in the killer matches I play, so obviously I can give an unbiased take on difficulty of matches if I'm jumping from a D tier killer to an A tier killer. So I waited a couple of weeks to let the dust settle on all the changes and played some Sadako before jumping in with a video. Now I do think it's definitely harder, and it's a combination of recent changes and compounding changes that have been done to this game for the past 2 years or so. Here's a TLDR of why I think it's harder if that's all you care about. 1. The spawn changes have made early pressure really inconsistent. 2. Healing speeds, which I've been worried about since the nerf of Mangled and Hemorrhage, have finally hit critical mass. 3. The overall way behavior have balanced the game for the past couple of years, and this ties in similar to the healing speeds. Again, something that I've been worried about for the past couple of years. Now, I don't want to make a video that's 45 minutes long, so we're going to try and compress my points as much as possible. Also, this isn't an us versus them argument, I don't care about that, and the obligatory I play more Survivor. And I can even prove it with stats this time. Look, here are my official stats from DBD's website, which I know aren't completely accurate because I play the events a lot. I have 3,000 hours in the game and it's recorded less than half of that.
No, I'm not sure about that one. I don't know if that checks out.
But I clearly play more Survivor, so if you want to call me a killer main, you're just objectively wrong. I actually just reread those stats. Behavior, where are you getting these numbers from? I haven't played Wesker since I first started playing the game, and I literally did a 50 win streak on Skull Merchant before different game modes are in the game. There is zero way that I have more hours on Wesker than I do on Skull Merchant.
I think we did a pretty good job so far.
First, we're going to start with the spawn changes. Now, a lot of creators have talked on this point, but I'm here with tangible evidence. For those who don't know, survivors now spawn together unless they have an offering, which in theory makes early pressure easier, at least base kit, and that's true. When they spawn far apart, they can all jump on separate generators, and you lose 3 generators by the end of your first chase, whereas if they spawn together, they need to seek out the generators, and you can pressure a lot of the team earlier off the spawn because they're all together. Let's use this clip from a match of Sadako I played. I can see every single survivor here with lethal pursuer.
Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust.
Because they all spawn together, I'm able to pressure the whole team at the start of the match, getting multiple injuries, whereas before, I would only be pressuring one survivor because they spawn far apart. 2 hits. Where'd Sable go? Sprint burst? I think I still got that hit, you know. That's 3 injuries 30 seconds into the match, which is exceptional pressure this early on in the game. Clear-cut evidence that the spawns do in fact buff the killer. Now the problem comes from the way that the spawns work because they're no longer consistent. Here's an example on the goal of what I'm talking about. Now I'm playing on Suffocation Pit on Macmillan, which if you're like me, you don't know the names for every single map, so it's just the rectangular one that has the tiles in the middle, and then you have shack on the top, and then you have the main building on the bottom. Now on this map, I spawned roughly here. So if I were to ask you where do you think the survivors have spawned, you're probably going to say down here near the main building because that's where they used to spawn. But uh-oh, what's this? They actually spawned in the corner of the map, which I only knew because they blew up the generator. So from the overview map, I spawned here, and they spawned here.
Ooh, that's kind of small. Yikes.
This is where the spawn issues arise. Since they all spawned on this side and my brain was on old spawn logic, if I pressure down here, that's 40 plus seconds easily of the survivors being able to slam every gen on the top side of the map completely for free, and that's as a mobility killer. If you're a mouse one killer, it would have been likely 60 to 70 seconds of free pressure for them. This likely would have lost the match immediately. The same thing happened in this clip that I showed earlier on Sadako. If it wasn't for Lethal Pursuer, I wouldn't have pressured dead ahead of me. Instead, I presume they would be on the right somewhere. Because the survivors are spawning so sporadically compared to how they used to spawn, you lose a lot of early pressure just trying to find them. You can see this yourself if you run Lethal Pursuer for a couple of matches, and you will see what I mean. The difference is night and day in the pressure that you can exude on the survivors, and this is where the spawn issue arises. Not the fact that they're spawning together, but the fact that the spawns are no longer consistent like they used to be, and they can spawn on the same side of the map as you, which means trying to find them earlier in the match without Lethal Pursuer is a lot more difficult, which means you've lost a lot more pressure. I'm hoping the visuals made it easier to digest the problem with the spawns. Again, I highly recommend you use Lethal Pursuer and you will notice a massive difference in your early game pressure.
Oh God, it's so good.
The next issue we have are the reset speeds, which is something that I've actually been talking about for about a year at this point. 2 years ago, back in 6.7.0, behavior nerfed medkits, healing speeds overall, and circle of healing, because injuring people no longer did anything for the killer, as survivors would reset themselves in about 10 seconds roughly. Behavior acknowledged that survivors resetting themselves that fast was unhealthy for the game as a whole, so rightfully they nerfed it.
Nice.
I point this out because since then, behavior have nerfed mangled and hemorrhage effect as a whole, putting a timer on it, something that nobody asked for or was talking about. And then every other patch for the past year, they've been hyper buffing healing perks more and more, then recently added a whole chapter dedicated to healing / support perks, and now we're right back to square one.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
Reset speeds are too fast, so injuring people doesn't really hold any pressure anymore, and it's actually worse than the circle of healing meta because resets are quicker and they don't even need to waste time setting up a boon. Sure, they can't self-care in the boon, but reset speeds are still happening just as quickly, if not quicker. Take the Sadako match from earlier where I injured 3 people in the span of 20 seconds right at the start of the game. Now, in under a minute after I got the 3 injuries, Alan had healed himself and I had injured him a second time, and everyone else had fully reset and were already on generators, having taken my tape. All this happened in about 45 seconds, and I will know I did get value here, specifically on the Alan, because I burnt through his medkit, which I knew would happen at the time, and which is why I left him. Hi, gamer. We'll try and waste his medkit early, but it can get even worse. Here's a clip from my video the other day. Okay, 1 is second. Good to know. Let's time how long it takes for Jeff to reset, shall we?
Ready? Go!
Nobody can sit there with a straight face and try and claim that healing off hook in 4 seconds is balanced. The issue is that they're buffing perks that were already balanced. Resurgence was balanced and Botany was definitely balanced. I say this because I'm not just trying to blindly hate on healing perks. A great example of this is the empathic connection buffs from Yoichi. Nobody used it when it was at 10% healing speed because it was outclassed by many other healing perks and the aura read wasn't worth it. So they buffed it up from 10% to 30%. However, in the same patch that they did that, they also giga buffed Resurgence to the state it's at now, which completely eclipsed empathic connection. They also buffed Autodidact as well, which also eclipsed empathic connection, meaning that nobody used empathic still. They then added Arella with the steady pulse update with do no harm. This further outclassed empathic connection, so behavior buffed empathic yet again up to 35% healing speed. Okay, at 35% it's actually worth running in comparison to the other perk. Another good change, but uh-oh. What's this? Has behavior in the same patch decided to buff Botany knowledge? No! You bet they have, meaning yet again, empathic is outclassed because behavior decided to buff an already balanced and meta healing perk.
I think we did a pretty good job so far.
This is textbook power creep. Empathic is actually in a balanced spot right now, but it will likely be buffed again because still nobody is using it because every perk around it is massively outclassing it. All those buffs have resulted in a healing meta that rivals old Circle of Healing. This then makes killer matches harder because you can't create pressure with injuries anymore, just like during the Circle of Healing meta, because it gets instantly reset. Lastly, we have the general buffs to Survivor over the past couple of years. I'll make it pretty quick because this could be a whole video itself, but since I started playing, which was between the Wesker release and Night release, Survivor have been buffed heavily in comparison to Killer, which combined with the recent changes has made a lot of matches a lot more difficult. Here's some tangible evidence. When I first started playing the game, these perks were the meta for both sides. Now, I may have forgotten a couple of them. It was 3 years ago at this point, so forgive me if I did. But these were the most common. I want to highlight all the perks that were nerfed from this list. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think one side has been shafted a little bit more than the other in this situation. Now, I'm also going to highlight the perks from these lists that have been buffed. So, out of the meta for Killer 2 years ago, 1 perk is unchanged, 1 perk got buffed, which by the way was accidental, they actually tried to nerf it, and then every other perk has been nerfed. Compare that to Survivor, where 3 perks got nerfed, 2 have been buffed, and the rest are unchanged. So when people claim that Survivor has been heavily nerfed, the evidence suggests otherwise for modern DBD. PPD. Also, the killer's meta hasn't been replaced with anything. In fact, the perks that popped up when these perks got nerfed then also got nerfed themselves. Remember when they nerfed Pain Res just in anticipation of it being used when they nerfed Overcharge and Call of Brine? Also, other metas have been nerfed. The Penti nerf destroyed Hex build, Franklin's is being deleted in an upcoming patch, Unbound and Machine Learning both got nerfed after they got buffed before they even had a chance to change the meta. The biggest meta perk that is on the killer roll in the past 2.5 years is probably Grim Embrace and its buff, or Nowhere to Hide. Meanwhile, not only has Survivor's meta perks not really been touched, but they've actually gained truly meta-defining new perks. The big ones being Finesse, Shoulder the Burden, We're Gonna Live Forever, and Dramaturgy. So killer meta has been nerfed over and over with no alternative, while Survivor meta hasn't really been touched, got buffed in 2 cases, and then they've given it even more meta perks. Combine this with base kit buffs for Survivor, the UI changes, the sabotage buffs, the HN kick limit, the anti-camp, the killer power UI nerfs, just to name a few, and they're going to add even more with phase 2. What has killer gotten as base kit buffs in that time? Well, medkits got nerfed, which as we established earlier has basically been reverted the past couple of patches, and when you kick a generator it loses 5% progress. They also added a field of view slider, and survivors can't 4% without bringing something in. Some people are going to say map offerings. That isn't a killer specific buff, that's just a nerf for scumbags on both sides. Before people put words in my mouth, I'm not saying that all these changes are bad, I'm not saying they're good either, but objectively speaking, survivors have been significantly buffed in their base kit for the past couple of years, while killer hasn't really had that, on top of the fact that their meta has been nerfed while survivors hasn't really been touched. Most of the killer buffs have come in the form of the new killers actually being strong. Dracula, Ghoul, Chucky, Singularity, Vecna are all really good killers, but the actual base kit of killer has gotten worse, which has left a lot of the old killers in the dirt. So, healing speeds, the spawn changes combined with significant buffs to survivors over the past couple of months are what have made the killer experience so miserable recently. I'll end it there so this video doesn't go on for 45 minutes and because I'm feeling quite ill. Sorry this one doesn't have as many memes and such. The weather in the UK is exceptionally humid and my room is absolutely unbearable right now, and it has been for the past 4 days, which is how long it's taken me to try and get this video done. Anyway, that's all from me gamers. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye for now.